All right, here we go. I think we've gone live. Let's see if it. Yep, we're live. All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome. We are up for some interesting shenanigans tonight, I guess. We'll try and make this entertaining and also informative and see how fast I can get a pair of bloomers done. Which shouldn't be too hard. So yeah, we just wanted to start off tonight saying hello and thank you and welcome to all of our new subscribers. Hello for getting us over 100 subscribers. So that's really awesome. Thank you very much. We really appreciate it. It'll help us be easier to find in the future for new people or for you all. But in any case, so yeah, we just kind of wanted to start this off. We had some fun new tools we found that are going to help us with our sewing, and yeah, we thought we'd start off chatting a little bit about that. So we recently just went to CathyCon, and that was super fun and awesome. We had a great time. Got to see lots of friends that we haven't seen in a while, and there was a interesting brand of scissors and they're called Famori Cutlery. How about that? So I don't know if they do knives as well, but they definitely do scissors and all sorts of things. Hello everyone, welcome. So yeah, Sam got, I don't know if you want to show off a little fun.
So I got some of their 4.5-inch opposable tweezers, curved. Not for sewing. I do a lot of stuff with miniatures and putting them together and painting. So I like having tweezers that are naturally closed without adding pressure. So I grabbed these because these look nice and they were a good price.
Yeah, they look like a useful tool, even for probably crafting as well, not just models and miniatures. So yeah, that was the thing. And I picked up these really nice little shears. They're a little bit beefier than your typical like tiny snips, but they so they'll cut through stuff, but they're still small enough that they're going to give me a great clip and precision. So that I'm excited about. And then I'll use it a little bit tonight, but then mostly I'm going to be using this. It's just my regular rotary cutter, but they have a tungsten carbide blade on them that I got from Famori, which is really awesome, and I'm very excited to use that because it's going to stay sharp for a while. But if you have the chance to see Famori in person and you need crafting scissors and instruments, then they were really actually very helpful. I described to them the kind of cutting that I needed. I was missing in my arsenal of tools, and that's when this was suggested to me. They didn't have it at the con, so they said, here is the one that we would suggest, and I was able to get it online and shipped to me in just a couple of days. So that was really awesome and very useful. And
so one really cool thing about their setup that we saw there is they had the tools to sharpen scissors and instruments there. So Rachel's snippers had a little burr on the end, and it was driving me nuts the whole weekend. So I went over there, and for like $1 or $2, they sharpened it for me, so I wouldn't go crazy anymore. And then they do free sharpening, I believe, at events of their own tools. If it's not.
And I can mail them, and they'll sharpen them for free as well. So there's a little case that came with the rotary blade that said, hey, keep this for mailing for sharpening, which is awesome and like amazing customer service. But in any case, now that we've gotten there, Michelle's here. Michelle is working on some ice cream shop head bows, some hand sewing. Yeah, the sharpening at the con was awesome. Now, nails, you want to show off your nails for today? What do we have?
Yeah. Hand sewing with nails, good times.
So, yeah, we're going to be starting off with the bloomers. So I kind of wanted to start this off with a little bit of like, if you're not sure how to make a pair of bloomers and you're looking for a pattern, I kind of wanted to give a little bit of information about that. And I know that in the description box down below, I've put all the supplies that you need. And there's also a couple of patterns down in there that are good suggestions. There's a cosplay pattern from the like McCall's cosplay line that has bloomers in it. So that is a good place to start. But then like, this is going to be ridiculous, but like horrible Halloween costumes of a smorgasbord of random things. But if you look very carefully down here, there's some little bloomers peeking out under this dress. And when I check the pattern instructions, it does have right here a little pair of bloomers. And actually, this is the pattern that I use that I, as my base, that I then like scaled up and scaled down to make the bloomers that I'll be making tonight and that we sell in the shop. But the other thing is if you find a pattern like this, you can see she's got incredibly long ones sticking out under this dress. And the pattern instructions do also show very long bloomers. So it's pretty easy to take long bloomers like that and shorten them. But the other thing too is if you can't find a weird like costume pattern that has bloomers in them, you can find some pajama pants patterns. Or if you just take some pajama pants that fit you nicely, you can just kind of trace them and kind of get yourself a pair of bloomers that's gonna work well for underneath your dresses. Now, I usually make short ones because a lot of people don't want them to stick out, but you could follow like this one here with the long bloomers and make longer bloomers to stick out from underneath your dresses, or if you have a long length dress, because I know that's a little bit in, you know, sometimes old school or sometimes the cottagecore vibe kind of uses the longer bloomers. So that is a very useful tool if you want longer ones, or you can just chop them off and make them shorter. Oh yeah, the rotary blade that went through that 1/4 inch foam. Yes, it just like sliced through that 10 millimeter or whatever it was. It was absolutely bonkers. I was like, I don't do crafting like that, but that was pretty cool. So I am going to switch myself over here and we're going to make this guy big, blue, and I am going to go over to my patterning table in the back. For hopefully you'll be able to hear me. I put my mic kind of in the middle of the room. So this is going to be more of the back of my body or not at all. And then just what you see here on the table. So these are going to be our supplies. And again, you can look in the description box down below. You're going to need the 1 inch wide no roll elastic, the 1/4 inch wide elastic for your legs. This will be for your waistband. You'll need cotton fabric or flannel, or honestly, I've used fleece to make bloomers if you are going to be extremely cold in the wintertime and you want something. Your pattern, I use 5/8 inch twill tape, but you could use ribbon. And actually, I'll talk to you a little bit if you wanted to make more of a look. If you're going to have your bloomers show a little bit, you can use a contrasting color ribbon to put on the outside of your bloomers to kind of jazz it up a little bit and make it a little spicy. I don't know. You might want a smaller ruler. This is a loop turner, and I'll use that for threading the elastic. But if you don't have a loop turner, just a simple large safety pin will work.
Rachel, what weight of cotton do you recommend? Or what do we use?
Honestly, we use quilting cotton. Any kind of quilting cotton will work. I would say anything heavier, like more of a canvas or a twill or a sports weight, that's going to be a little bit too stiff unless you're looking for a very specific poofy look that you're going to show them. But for something underneath, I usually just go for something lightweight and cool, because it's going to be, you know, another layer underneath all of your skirts and petticoats and all of that, and blouses and maybe. So, you know, the more layers, if you're doing this for the summertime, you want something more lightweight and cool. And I actually like the Symphony broadcloth from Joann's. And it comes in a lot of different colors if you don't want just white or black. But you will need about 1 yard to 1.5 yards. And I'll show you, it kind of depends on the size that you are. And if the fabric that you're using has a print on it that is directional. So if you want all of your pictures on your print to go one way, then you'll need a little bit more fabric than if you're using a solid like I have, that you can kind of adjust your pattern pieces. And then you are going to need some kind of, well, you don't need a soft lace, but I like to use a soft lace. I use this cotton cleaning lace, but you can use, honestly, anything. I find the softer the better. So touch it, feel it, to see if it's going to be scratchy on your leg or catch on your petticoats, because you don't want either of those. So I'm not going to use scissors at all, really, other than my small snips, but I will be using this cutting mat, or this cutting ruler, while I use my rotary blade. So let's start off by moving some of this. I'm going to put everything over here. And I do also have my iron already heating up. So that is another tool that you're going to need for this adventure. And one last thing, you may want a disappearing ink pen. I like the, what are they called? Friction is what they're called, friction pens. They disappear with heat. So if you draw on the outside of your bloomers or the inside, and this goes for any garment that you're working on, you take your iron and steam over it, and then the ink goes away. Or you can use the air disappearing ones. Those work as well too, but I personally like these iron off ones. So
don't some of those kind of reappear in extreme cold?
Yes, in extreme cold. If you throw them in the freezer, or if you leave them out in your car and it's wintertime, then yeah, they might reappear. But then the good thing is you just iron over it again and it'll go away. So my mat is actually 1 yard wide. And I'm going to put my fabric this way, just so I can have the empty space. And so depending on your size and the size of your pattern pieces, you'll lay them out. So since I have just a solid cotton, it doesn't really matter which way I put the pattern pieces, but if you had a print, most prints run up and down this way. So you would want to put your bloomers this way. This little notched part is going to be what goes around your leg, and this is going to be your waistline up here, and this will be the bottom. So if you had a fabric with a print on it, you would want to put your pattern pieces laid out like this. And as you can see, it goes a little bit over the edge of that 1 yard. So that's going to be where you'd need more fabric. Or if you're making extremely long ones, like knee length or longer, then you'll need more yardage as well. So I'm going to take my pattern pieces, I'm going to put them going up and down this way. And I'm going to take the other one and turn it around so that these leg notches kind of create like a little, they kind of overlap each other. And then that is what's going to save me fabric. So I stay within that 1 yard guideline that I have initially. But if you have, again, wider legs, or, you know, just like a wider pant overall, then it may go a little over. So to start off with that, I'm actually going to scooch this one in just a little bit. I like mine to touch. So this pattern is the one that I ripped off of. So this is the fabric one that I use all the time. But most of the time you'll have a paper pattern a la the long ones. So these are the long ones. And what you can do is just fold them up like I've done here on top of themselves. And you can lay them out on your fabric this way and just fold them up, and you can cut it off wherever the length that you want them. So we'll take that out of the way. And so what I like to do is take my ruler, and I'm going to take my rotary cutter and open it up. And then I just kind of, even though I have the pattern pieces, I could pin and I could cut with scissors. But the quick and dirty way is just to lay your ruler down over top of your pattern piece so that it goes just outside the edge of it and cut. So there we have that. And this side I lined up with the cut edge of the fabric already. So I will come up here and on each edge, I'll just kind of line it up with the edge of the pattern piece and make a cut. Try not to lean over the camera view too much. Cut. And then do the bottom. And you want to press down pretty hard with the opposite hand that's not holding your blade onto the ruler to give yourself a good cutting edge. That's going to help keep your ruler from sliding around because that is kind of annoying. And then what I'm going to do here is cut up the leg, but it's very close to this body part. So I'm going to just cut down until it starts to curve. And then I just kind of eyeball and follow it along. Some people like to cut this with scissors, but it doesn't really, I guess I'm saying if you practice enough, it's not too hard to just cut. However, if you go nice and slowly with the rotary cutter. And the good thing about this, especially this blade, is that you don't have to press very hard to get it to cut through all the layers of your fabric. So you could, if you were doing, say you had a bunch of friends who needed bloomers and they were all about the same size, or you were making bloomers for like a maid cafe or, you know, anything. And then you could layer up a bunch of fabrics on top of each other and then just cut them all out at the same time. And then you cut out, you know, 3 or 4 pairs of bloomers instead of just the one. I'm going to take my pattern pieces off. Pattern pieces at this point, not super important. I'm going to show you a little layering trick that I use for when I go back over to the sewing machine. So I'll take out all this. And then if you see right here, I didn't quite cut through all the fabric. I had a little missed spot, so I'll just go back there and kind of trim it up. Oh, another spot. Come on. That was me not pressing hard enough. I don't have to press very hard with this blade, but you do have to actually press down. So that's that. That pretty much sums up the cutting. Let's see. So you can tell the difference between the front pieces and the back pieces often because the front scoop, I don't know if you can see where they line up. The front scoop of the bloomer is going to be smaller than the back leg scoop just because, you know, you usually have a bigger butt than you have front. So the back pieces is cut wider. So what I like to do is lay them on top of each other like this. And then I line them up where the leg seam is touching. And this is what is going to start us off on the right foot. And because all of these fabric pieces look exactly the same on the front and the back, it isn't super important. However, you do want to make sure that you have a left leg and a right leg. And if you sew them together the wrong way, you may end up with 2 right legs. And I've done that before. So what I like to do is when I have the 2 layers at the front on top of the 2 layers at the back, I will take just the one front layer and peel it up. And I'll take it and I'll slide it to the back and of all of the pieces. So now we have a sandwich of a front layer, 2 back layers, and then the other front layer. And that's going to help us when we go over to the sewing machine, which I will do right now. All right. Oh, Melissa's here. Got bloomers from us today. Yep, I sent them in the mail. I'm surprised they arrived already.
Speaking of sewing machines, also at Katsucon, they had a sewing machine brand there. They had Janome, which, if you've watched some of our streams, Rachel does have that.
Uh-huh. It's my favorite baby. I've used it for 18 years now.
Yeah. We had a chance to speak to one of their sales reps as well as one of their company reps and talk about how, you know, we love Janome. You know, we love all of our sewing babies.
Yeah.
But, you know, That's probably the one that's been in use longest out of all of our machines.
Yes. And it's funny because if anytime somebody asks me, oh, what kind of sewing machine should I get? I'm just starting out. I will hands down always recommend a Janome and then a Brother, which is what Michelle uses. But Janomes, I know, are beasts and will last forever.
I mean, my first sewing machine was a Janome as well.
Right,
you remember my old one?
Yes.
Yeah, it was super basic, just like no electronic at all. Had like 6 stitches. 3 of them were different widths of straight stitch. Like you couldn't even change the width. You had to like choose a preset different width.
I will say the sales rep for Janome was quite surprised by the model Rachel uses and what she's been able to sew on it.
Yeah, I should have told her what I used.
Oh,
right. That was funny. All right, so now that we've come over here with the sewing machine and we have our weird front, back, front sandwich, I am going to peel my layers apart and have a front and a back and a front and a back. And what I do is I turn them to the legs. And here is the part where feel free to pin. But for very short, straight seams like this, I hands down will never take the time to pin. I know a lot of people do just so things aren't sliding. If you're using a more like floopy, wiggly fabric, you might want to pin just so it doesn't like go all over the place. But for a quilting cotton that's not going to stretch or move around a lot, then pinning's not super important. So you're going to, most of the time I sew things with a 1/2 inch seam allowance, but you may want to follow your instructions from your pattern. They usually use 5/8 inch seam allowance, but for something like bloomers, it's not super important because you're just going to cinch it all in with elastic anyway. So I will I'm still leaving these kind of on top of each other. I've just folded the top front and back away from the bottom front and back. And I'm going to sew that one first, and then I'll kind of tuck it under and sew the top one. So I kind of just taken this one, tucked it under, and now I've got the other 2 pieces. And if they don't line up perfectly, like width-wise across here, it's kind of fine. You're gonna be finishing things off. So that was the other thing that I would say is that now for me, I'm gonna serge. So if you have a serger, awesome. If you want to cut out all of your pattern pieces with pinking shears, because you are going to want to wash bloomers. They're like an undergarment, essentially. So I wash mine after every time I wear them. So I like to have all my edges finished off so they're not like fraying or anything. If you have just a regular sewing machine, you can put it on the zigzag stitch and zigzag over the edge. It kind of like fake overlocks it just to kind of help hold the threads in there so they're not like just flying out wherever. But generally, too, like quilting cottons are pretty tightly woven, so they're not going to fray too much if you cut them, decently on grain. But I'm going to flip around here and serge off just these 2 seams, and then we'll move on.
So yeah, if anyone has any questions, type them. Feel free to ask about bloomers, ask about us in general, Katsu. I love them. Yes, it is awful to rethread sergers.
Oh my gosh, yes. I did also have a Janome serger, but it was very old, and I inherited a baby lock, and that threads itself. So I have passed along the Janome because I would rather have a self-threading serger, is what I have to say about that. Yeah, they're a pain. So I've got here, we will focus. There we go, maybe. All right, it's been serged. These 2 little short seams, and these are going to be the seams that just run down on the inside of your leg. It's the inseam. So now, because of the way that I did the sandwich, I will open up my bloomers like this, and I'm going to have one of them that I lay with the seam allowance side face down. And then the other one I will open up, and I will take that seam allowance and I will put it face up. So when I put them together, it's that right sides to right sides thing. It'll be the nice finished seam is what I'm sewing. And this is the one thing that I do kind of pin as I'm working is right here at this inseam. I will line them up as best I can. Let's see if we'll focus there. See, I'll line them up like that. I'll fold them, and then I will take one little pin and put them together like these, just right there.
So Leela Blue Pins, she just made herself or themselves some and used a French seam.
Oh yeah, French seams are another good option if you don't want to use pinking shears or overcast or a serger. I'm very lazy and I don't like French seams because it's double sewing. And but yes, if you don't have any of those options, French seams are very immaculate looking and are very strong and very durable for lots of washing.
Okay, plan on making peaking bloomers soon. I'll be using a pair of bicycle shorts I like for the base pattern. Nice.
Yep, that is what I like to do. I have made myself lots of shorts and pajama shorts off of things that I have already in my wardrobe. So what I've got here is it curves up, and this curvy bit is the part that goes under, like through your crotch. So where your zipper would be on some jeans and then all the way up the back of your butt. And so I will take these, and because we cut them out, you know, the two fronts and the two backs together, they line up pretty well. This might be hard to see in this one, so we'll show. Maybe I'll make myself a little big here. So they're going to line up pretty well. And I don't actually pin this. This would be another spot where you could pin all along here and not just at that seam line. But I usually don't bother. I kind of line up the first half of it, sew it, and then when I get to this inseam, then I'll kind of line up the second half and make sure that it's all even. So there we go. We're going to pop that in here. But because we did cut them out on top of each other, they line up really well, and so the cotton's not going to shift around too much. Go around that curve and get to this inseam, take out my pin so I don't sew over it. That was one of those things that no one ever told me as a young seamstress, was you probably shouldn't sew over your pins. And then when I got my Janome, the rep that sold it to me gave me a little intro class and was like, why are you sewing all over your pins? You're going to break so many pins. And she was right. I broke a lot of pins. So I just
have a question. How do you prevent the diaper kind of sagging look when doing the center seams?
What, around that crotch seam? I would say some of that is about the cut of the pattern piece. And also, like, sometimes bloomers are just kind of saggy. So I don't know. I mean, at least for me, I don't really care what they look like so much as they cover up all of my butt. And they fit comfortably. I don't know. I've not had.
We've also had some trial and error. You know, we've adjusted our pattern.
Yeah. So again, I think it is more to do with the like pattern, that fit of your pattern pieces. Which I have to admit, I'm not like the best person to cover like pattern alterations and fitting, because I usually just like hack and slash and then pinch and prod. I don't know until it fits. But I'm going to go here. So now that I've sewn up my crotch seam, I'm going to go and serge that crotch seam. And then for me, in my step, I am going to open it up and I'm going to serge around every single side of raw edge of fabric. so that I can have it nice and finished off and easy to complete the bloomers, so that I know that they're not going to come undone in someone else's wash. So we'll go over here.
Michelle, do you have any tips for preventing the diaper?
Huh? I know one time Michelle sewed her own pants onto her own crotch.
So, to expand on this topic, I was making some OG shorts, and the crotch area looked weird, so I put them on inside out to like kind of pin and like hand sew this one part to make it look fitted and not strange, and that is how I sewed it to my own underwear. I went to go take them off and I was like, wait, they're stuck.
So yeah, trial and error with our patterns and cutting it, and we all have vastly different kind of booty shapes. So we have kind of tried to account for many in our patterns.
I will say, the lower you cut your crotch seam, the like baggier, saggier the pants look. Like the higher up the crotch seam is, that curve, the tighter they're going to be to your crotch, more fitted.
Yeah, Leela brought up it's not a form-fitting garment, so it's going to be difficult to completely remove that.
Right. Yeah, especially for this.
Bag.
There's elastic on both legs and on the waist, so it's just going to be kind of like poofy. It's almost like that pumpkin pant kind of look, which you can't really prevent a lot of sag. The other thing I would say is make sure that you have a pattern that has a front and a back, because the front is cut with less curve than the back, as I was showing you that swoop when I laid the pattern pieces on top of each other. Because if you have cut out two backs, then you're going to have a lot of extra room in your front where you don't need it. And that being said, when you have sewn up your garment, you may want to sew something into the waistband to kind of indicate to yourself where the back is, because oftentimes the back and the front do look fairly similar, and you may be putting your bloomers on backwards, which is not going to help with the saggy crotch.
Now, would you say for someone who does have appendages in the front that they should look for maybe something that is just one side, the front's the same as the back, so that they have that extra baggy area in the front?
Right.
Yeah, so if you're interested in our bloomers and you were, assigned male at birth, you have appendages that you may need extra fabric for, just let us know when you order. Because Rachel makes these usually custom to order. So we can take any measurements into account.
Yeah, definitely. And I know I made a fleece pair of bloomers not too long ago, and the customer requested a slightly longer leg length and a slightly shorter waist to crotch length, because they were very short waisted and they didn't want them going like way up high and like, high rise. So I kind of moved everything down so they had a longer leg and a shorter top. And so like things like that we can always adjust for. Oh,
I love your yarn stash in the back, Rachel. Just got back from buying some sale yarn at Michael's myself.
Yeah, I've been collecting that. So long ago, I used to work at Hancock Fabrics, and so when you work at the craft store, you just see things on sale or clearance, and a lot of things went home with me that probably didn't need to go home with me.
Your blouse is awesome, Rachel. Did you make it? No, she found it at Katsucon.
Katsucon, yes, it was a whole dress. It's a Chinese brand that I'd never heard of. But yeah, it's got an amazing textured fabric, and I can link it in the comments, or at least link the brand. I think Chinese Lolita Updates has posted this brand before too. Oh, Hancock Fabrics. Oh, well, if any of you are in our Discord, I posted a picture of a Hancock Fabric plastic bag that Michelle sent me in the mail the other day that I don't know how she had intact in her supplies of stuff.
Well,
Because
you know how as an adult you have a bag of bags and you end up with bags of bags and bags of bags of bags. So anyway, the point is that I need to send Rachel something. I am a bag lady. I organize things into grocery bags. Yes, reusing. And I reached in my bag of bags and I pulled out a bag and I said it was meant to be. And I sent her a message saying, "You are going to find my packaging very funny." And that's all I said. And then one day while I was at work, it arrived at her house and she wrote me back in all caps. And to be honest, I'm surprised that it, didn't just fall apart. Because that bag is old. It's an old bag.
it's an old bag. Because seriously, they've been out of business for at least 5 years now. And
Yeah.
Michelle didn't have a Hancock's near her house in Maryland. So the last time she went there was when she lived in Richmond with me, which is like nigh on 8 years ago at least.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think that really goes to show that those bags are really polluting the planet. They do not go away.
Oh. All right. So next stage, now that I've got everything serged and finished off, is to put on my twill tape on the leg. And this is going to be my casing for my 1/4 inch elastic. What I was saying earlier is if you had a ribbon and you wanted to put it on the outside of your fabric. So you see here, this is my outside where the seam is finished off nicely. The inside is where I have serged. You could take your contrasting ribbon and put it on here. And when it gathers down, you'll have a color or something that shows up against your fabric for an extra cute look if you wanted some, to match a dress or something like that. But I usually take these just honestly for sellability. It's easier to hide that kind of thing. So I just use white on my white and put it on the inside. You can do it really on either side. It doesn't matter. But I'm just for myself going to be putting them on the inside, and we'll move on to the lace part next. Now, this would be the stage in which you could take that heat erasable friction pen and draw where you want to lay this quill tape. You can do that to kind of help give yourself a guide on where to lay it. I have this interesting seam guide that came with my Janome machine, actually, that I'm going to take. And there is little screws usually in your machine because, again, this came from my Janome machine, but I'm going to use this on my industrial. And it's going to allow me to pick the measurement because my little base plate has measurements on it of how wide, but it doesn't go to 1.5 inches. And I like just to put my twill tape at 1.5 inches. So I just line up this little seam guide right here. I just tie that or screw the little screw in to hold it down. And then I take my bloomers and I do wrong sides up. So this is all the inside. And I'm going to face up here. And I'm going to take my twill tape and I will lay it on top. And I kind of line up right here with the edge of this seam guide and line up my ribbon, my twill tape right here where my needle goes. And I will just start sewing it on. And this is just for me for speed. But again, if you feel like you need to be more precise, you don't have much experience, you can absolutely use that friction pen to give yourself a guide to line up. Or if you are lucky enough to have a sewing machine that has markings on the faceplate of it that go wide enough, then you can just use that as your guide. I think actually my Janome faceplate does go to 1.5 inches, so I can follow that a bit more easily, but the industrial that I have only goes to 1.25 inches, and I like it just to be a little bit wider than that. So I actually don't cut my twill tape until I'm all the way done sewing it. And I do kind of like to stretch it out. I'm stitching it on here.
I usually put a line of washi tape on the machine as a seam guide for anything more than on the plate. That's a cool trick.
Yeah, I've heard of that, like with like blue painter's tape, but washi tape sounds exponentially more adorable. Very good idea. Yeah, because actually this seam guide that I have here really only goes to 1.5 inches. So if I wanted something wider than that, I would have to use washi tape or blue painter's tape. So I am leaving this attached just because until I go back here and sew the top portion of. And I personally like to use the 5/8 inch wide fabric or tape just because it gives you a little bit more space when you're threading the elastic through it, in case you didn't sew right on the edge and you kind of, if you wobble your line a little bit. And that's a good thing about if you have not quite the straightest stitches either with a project like this, is that it's all going to be gathered down in that elastic, so you're never going to see a wobbly seam. That's why bloomers, and especially, I mean, bloomers are an undergarment generally, so it's not really the end of the world. So, oh, you know what? I need my snips. I will do. Put these things in action. So oftentimes I would use a snip like this to cut around a curve, but I don't want to essentially I want to keep the integrity of that seam intact while, as a garment. So I wouldn't cut off a curve like that, but usually when I do like the top of a dress, I'll cut that curve. So I'll just take my little snips and I'll just cut through real good. And then we're going to go to the other leg. So that is a little bit of the annoying thing about pants. You got to do one leg and then the other leg. Do everything twice. I will line this up here on the edge and start sewing it on.
So yeah, those of you that went to Katsu, it was great seeing you guys. Our next show will be Anime Boston. We actually just booked our hotel for that. And then we'll be at Colossal Con.
Yep. The next
so this
weekend.
will be our first time back to back on the road, not coming on the screen. Wonder how it would look pairing red bloomers with black lace under a black old school dress. That could be cute.
Oh, yeah, that sounds really cute. So the bloomers that I make, you can see on our shop, I usually just do white with white lace, but I do black with black lace or with white lace, because especially I know a lot of old school, having peaking bloomers is a thing. It's a look. And a lot of times with that black with the white lace is also a look. So that is why I have that option available. But yeah, red bloomers underneath, and especially with some red accessories and hair pieces, would probably look really nice. You could have that like red and black bonnet or the maxi pad headdress. I think that would look really cute. All right, that's one side done, and we're gonna go do the top of this twill tape. And that's the good thing about the second side, is we can just stretch it between our hands and just sew as fast as possible.
I got my little travel kettle ready to make some tea.
Oh.
And I forgot to put water in it.
Oh no.
But hey, I now have a travel kettle for our next trip.
That's exciting. So now we are done with the seam tape. So I just buy big, huge rolls of it and just cut them off as I'm making bloomers. But I gave you an approximate amount. It is going to depend on the actual width of your legs that your pattern pieces as to how much you're really going to need. But if you do the one leg, then cut it off, and then do the other leg, then cut it off, then, you know, you should usually have enough. So I'm going to actually take off this little seam guide. I don't need that anymore. And I'm going to pop out my lace. And so this is just the basic, like, white, soft cotton lace. We've used different ones in the past. This is just what I could get my hands on this time. And actually, I may link my favorite Etsy shop that has lace, because they ship from California and it gets here really fast and the prices are pretty good. So anybody wants cotton lace, this shop has a pretty good.
Yeah, before that one we had, let me go.
Oh yeah, so she's got that's the lace I had before. So what I'm going to do, what I did was turn over this was the inside with the seam. We're going to turn it so that it's outside facing up now. And I'm going to take my lace and I'm going to put it on top of my fabric facing in, so that after I sew it on, we'll flip it down and do some top stitching and it'll stick out on the bottom. So have someone complimenting your smart purchase of a travel kettle and wanting to know.
Yeah, they were wondering what it looked like. I think I got it for like $14, and this is silicone, so it folds down, so it ends up just being like this tall for packing.
Oh, that's really cool. All right,
yeah,
so
Taxicon, Michelle brought hers, so it's like we need one for when me and Rachel just go places.
All right. I'm just going to sew this on. You can sew with a 1/2 inch seam allowance when you put on your lace. It kind of depends. Yeah, so you're going to basically end up making a rolled hem with it, except for you're not going to double fold, and that's why I like to serge off the bottom. A rolled hem would be a true double fold, and so you could get away with not finishing off that edge because that whole raw edge is going to be encased in the seam. And I did used to make them like that before I put lace on them, but I think the lace just looks nicer. But what we will do is sew this lace on, and when we fold it back, we'll top stitch it down to kind of help hold that seam in place and make sure that the lace is always pointing down, because it is annoying if things are flipping around and flapping. So we'll go on here. And I'm actually sewing at about a 3/8 inch seam allowance right now. I am taking that inspiration off of just the size of my lace and just where the pattern is and how much of the pattern I want to show, because I put my my serged edge. It doesn't really matter what the seam allowance on this one is. Let's see. We'll go here.
Leela was debating on crocheting their own lace for a Lolita dress. They can't find the right matching color.
I have seen some crochet lace. There's a YouTuber that I follow that has that, and I'm just like, do I want to get into that nonsense?
I'm tempted to take up tatting just because it's like, ooh, it's a cheap.
You know what I've always wanted to try? Bobbin lace. Ooh. That looks like a lot of fun. But again, do I need another craft? No. So here is where I have sewn my seam with the lace on, and I'm going to flip it back. And you can stitch on this side if you feel like it's easier to see. You can stitch with this side up so you can catch both of the little pieces of that seam in your new stitch. and it's one way or the other. I'm used to doing it this way, and because of the white fabric, I can see where that seam line is. So I'm just going to put it in here and just go ahead and fold back, and I kind of pull apart with my hands to kind of make sure that it's nice and flat as I'm sewing across it. And I kind of use the edge of the presser foot as my guide to where to sew. And we're just going to top stitch this down. The thing that I try and do when I'm making my bloomers is do as much of the work while they're open and flat as possible to make it easier on yourself. I had been closing them up when I first started, and then trying to work things in a small circle is really annoying. So it's much easier to do all of this when it's open and flat. All right, so that's one leg done. Oh, the bobbin lace is time consuming. Yeah, it does look so time consuming. It's just really pretty. Padding does look like maybe not as slow. I don't know. I've seen a little bit of that too.
Yeah, and tatting, it's only like $5 to start out, which is like,
I don't know why my brain is going to that Madeline episode where she's forced to work in this, like, make black French lace out of your own hair.
Pardon? Repeat that? Madeline?
Madeline.
The beloved children's book?
Yes. She, like, at some point in one of the, like, episodes is in some weird underground child worker factory making black lace out of actual hair.
I have not heard of this.
Did I dream this up? Was this a fever dream? Am I the only one?
No, you did not.
You keep
it is
talking
from
about a
Madeline
show.
Lost in Paris.
There you go! Damn! I have, like...
Oh my God,
I'm just like...
I have never heard of this nonsense. What?
I have so much, I don't even know why I remember random crap from Madeline. It's like the one thing that makes you go, every time you have a stomach pain, you're like, oh no, I have appendicitis.
Henry takes Madeline to the lace shop's basement, which is full of kidnapped orphan girls who are slaves to make lace to sell. What?
Yes!
Just...
1999. What? It was 1999. That makes no sense.
One of the girls, Fifi, a girl working as a slave under harsh conditions, befriends Madeline. It is then revealed that Madame Lecroc forged Madeline's court custody papers, and the two crime lords plan to steal her family inheritance as she works in the factory.
What? What is this madness? Madeline!
Okay.
Like, girls get whooping cough.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Abuse. What?
I remember that movie just being very messed up and me being like, what? You can make lace out of hair?
I mean, yes. I knew that.
Video animated musical adventure comedy drama produced by Deke Entertainment. Okay.
I would not call it a comedy drama, but okay.
Oh
but
God.
also, Deke is the one that did the original Sailor Moon US dub that with like the bad Jersey accent Molly. So I'm just like, now I'm curious if they have the same Canadian voice actors.
All right, so here I have finished sewing. It's so hard, all this white on white. Everything's washed out. There, you can kind of see the seam that I've sewn. It's very close to the edge of this, but then now the lace is going to stay down. You'll see it. Ooh, there we go. Maybe. There we go. You'll have to trust me. It's stitched down. Why is the... There we go. It's stitched down. There we go. So next, now we've got our lace and our elastic channel sewn. Now is the point where I am actually going to pop back over to the table. And we're going to add in this work we'll take away that. We're gonna pop over here. I'm sorry about the angle of the camera. My phone did not want to rotate the right way. So I will come over here and actually I'm going to take my little snippies. And at this point, just for the sake of efficiency and speed, I'm going to cut my elastic, and my mat has a grid. And I know for this size, I cut my leg elastic pieces at 20 inches both. So I'll just trim and trim. But again, this is going to vary on your legs. You have smaller legs, you'll want smaller elastic pieces. And then my waist is I get the no roll elastic specifically. I think that if you see how it's kind of hard to pinch down, it stays in its casing a little bit better. And for this size that I'm making, I need to cut a 31-inch piece of elastic. So we're going to go roll that open, lay it out, and 31 inches. Okay, and we'll set these to the side. I don't need them anymore, but I will need these for later. And I am going to actually take away my cutting mat. This would be the point where you need your iron. And the table that I have is stapled over with heavy canvas, so it can be ironed on top of. And then this is the point where you could use a small soft tape measure, but I like this little metal ruler because I can stick it in the seam, and I do iron on top of it sometimes, and it's not going to melt it because it's made out of metal, although it does get a little bit hot. So what I like to do, this is where it starts looking real funny. You're kind of almost at pants stage when you're here. You can see kind of the two legs of it. And this is where I'm going to iron the top down to make the elastic casing for the top. We've kind of already finished off the bottom, so now we need the top casing. And I've found that I like to iron it just to kind of give myself an easier guide. It makes the sewing faster. It's funny because there's a lot of things that people would say iron that Michelle and I never iron. But this is one of those things that I do prefer ironing. Makes the sewing a little bit faster. So now that I've kind of smoothed out that top, I'm going to roll over because I'm using 1-inch wide elastic. This might be kind of hard to see. I am going to measure up to a little bit over 1.5 inches. So this like tiny line here, I don't even know if you can see that. But I'm going to just line it up so that it goes to the line just past the 1.5-inch line. And that's going to make sure that I have enough to tuck under. I like to kind of tack that middle seam first with my iron and then go do both of the other sides. And I can kind of line it up. And this, since I've tacked the middle and the cotton isn't too movie, it doesn't like wiggle around too much, it's pretty easy to just kind of measure a couple of spots to see where they land and iron them all down without having to be super duper precise. I just kind of do that middle seam, the middle of each side of the leg. And then sometimes I will even kind of hold it down with my hand, measure that little bit, and then measure the whole thing all the way across. Just like that. And now that I've got that main seam ironed in, I'm going to take my ruler back again to the middle, and I'm going to tuck down this little bit, fold that underneath itself so there's no raw edge showing. And we did serge it, but we want to, it just makes a little nicer casing. It's softer on your waist where the elastic is. And I'm going to fold this one to that one little line just past the 1-inch line. So it's, I guess, 1 1/8 is the measurement that I'm using. And that's going to allow for enough room when you're threading your elastic through that casing that it doesn't get stuck. Because I have definitely sewn, and if you feel too like you're not super great at getting right along the edge of this fold while you're sewing your stitch, then you can make it a little bit bigger so you have a little bit more space to sew and still have space to thread your 1-inch elastic through. You could iron it down at 1 1/4, and then that's going to get you a little bit of extra wiggle room for when you're sewing that seam down. So I will come on over here.
One of our viewers saw someone use an IV pole to hold the water pouch for their steam iron. It was pretty fun.
Yeah, I've seen that too. I actually have a big, huge cup hook that I screwed into the wall. So mine's hanging on the edge of the wall. I would definitely, because I am right-handed, prefer my iron tank to be hanging on the other side, but that is just not the layout of my room.
If you look at the post we put on today, you can see the setup for the stream. And
Yes.
The crazy one with the tripod on the wall, if you look beside the tripod, you'll see the hanging water tank.
Yes, and actually there is a hook on the bottom of the tripod, and I hooked it on that same cup hook that is holding the water tank. I used to have a regular home iron, and I just got so tired of refilling the iron tank every 5 seconds that I was like, F it, I'm getting an industrial one with a giant tank on it. So I will flip over to the other side. And like I said, I do all of this as flat and open as possible. I used to sew these side seams up and then do the top ironing, and that was such a hassle that I have since stopped doing that.
I have a question. Any ice cream shop updates? I am craving more rainbows. Well, as you can see, Michelle is working on head bows. We are nearly done with all of our last set of pre-orders.
Yep. Accessories are being worked on. Sam is actually coming down to my house tomorrow to watch my kiddo so that I can get some more greater sewing done on Ice Cream Shop, because basically I'm at attached skirt to bodice phase, and all of the all the belts are done, and all the bodices are done, and all the skirts are done, and they just need to be combined together, and then they'll be ready to go.
And after those are all shipped off, we do have some fabric of some colors, not all colors, available. So we may piece together some of those for ready to sell.
Mm-hmm. We'll probably be taking a little bit of a break from specifically Ice Cream Shop, but there will be more colorful rainbow things in the works coming up.
Possibly also aquatic rainbowy things.
Aquatic rainbow, yes. If anyone had seen our picture that Sam's posted a few times on Instagram and Facebook of the Pride 2020 runway that had all of the different brightly colored dresses that were one of each color of the rainbow, the final looks were jellyfish rainbows, which we have also recently posted the old version of, but we will be, there's a new version that's been printed. So I think that is, once I am finished with these ice cream shops, I'll pick up that fabric from Michelle and we'll make some. It might be a little while, but I'll just be making straight ready to sell. They won't be made to order. So when they're available, those are just straight up be available.
When they're available, you will hear Paulina scream from Agato Designs. And then it will be ready for everyone else.
I mean, she's already bought the sample.
She just wants the sample.
She's already claimed the sample, so you won't have to fight her for any of the ones that'll be put up on the website.
Right, yeah, for sure. At least there's that. Okay, so I am done. I don't know if you can see this at all. I have double folded these, and I'm not going to be too fussy about it. I'm just going to the fabric will hold the fold well enough. That is the good thing about cotton, is that it holds a steamed fold. I'm going to turn my iron off, set that aside, and I'm going to make sure that I grab my little loop turner and my elastic and come back over to the machine. Here we go. All right. So let's get rid of
as Rachel puts all the bits together for ice cream shop, we will take pictures of the different color combos so you can see kind of what everyone's ordered.
Yeah. So at this point, I've got my elastic pieces. I'm going to set those aside. I've got my loop turner. I'll need those for the elastic. Oh, patrons. Yes, patrons will have first dibs on jellyfish.
Yeah.
Yep.
We will give you a few days heads up where you'll get, probably up to a week to make your orders first.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But
so, okay.
All new releases, patrons get first dibs.
Yep. All right. So I'm going to take my little narrow elastic. I like to do the leg elastic first. And it just kind of makes my life easier. And I take this loop turner, and this would be the point in which you would want your safety pin if you don't have a loop turner. I used to do it this way, and then Paulina from Egato turned me on to the loop turner, and that has changed my life.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Michelle can tell you about this extreme anger and anxiety she has from threading elastic through casing.
I gotta say, the loop turner has really changed my life profoundly.
So the cool thing about it, you just kind of, it's such a long tool, it just kind of slides and slides until you reach the outside. Boop, and it, there we go.
That would have saved me the one time I kept losing elastic.
Yeah, and actually that's the good thing too, is if it pops off the loop turner, it is really easy to stick it back in and fish it out. So yeah, no more lost elastic. I'm making an order from Wawak. Sam, do you want one? Yeah, some people use the bodkin. Michelle had those for a while, but this loop turner thing is like primo. I don't know if you can see
why don't you go ahead and order an extra?
It's got a little hook on it, almost like a latch hook rug tool, and it's got a little like thingy that closes down. If you can see that, it like pops over the top once you put the elastic over that hook, and then I just take the little circle end and just kind of pull and pull and pull and pull and pull and pull until I reach the edge of the elastic at the edge of here. So now it's not sticking out anymore. And you would want to pin this right here. Only need one pin, but pin it here if you're going to finish pulling it through, or you can just straight up sew it down right now, and that's what I'm going to do.
Double bar tacking.
I have a little bar tack function on my machine, so I just put it down on the edge and press go, and it tacks everything down, so you can't even see it anymore. It's all encased in there in that little stitch. And then I still have this metal thing sticking in, so I can at this point go and pull and pull and pull and pull until the elastic pops at the end. But the good thing about that loop, that little hook on it, it never lost the elastic. So I'll pop that off and then go and tack down the other end. And then we'll go to the other leg, and it makes it super quick. Oh yeah, the latch hook is great for if you're doing, that's the point of the loop turner, is to grab the end of a tiny hoodie strap and flip it in, so you can flip it inside out. Now, we tend to just double fold, like a double fold bias tape. We use that bias tape maker to make our double folded straps and then just top stitch them all down. But we like to top stitch everything anyway, it just gives a good clean finish to things. So I'll go ahead and pop this little latchy thing and pull it on through. And then I'm going to continue pulling and pulling and pulling. And then there we go. Pop that off. Tack it down. And And then not forget
free sewing.
to put it back on free sewing. Because otherwise the next seam that I sew is just going to be a bar tack, and that's not going to be fun.
The industrial likes to talk to her.
Oh yes, my industrial talk. When I turn it on, it says, wishing you a happy work, which is very adorable. So now that we've got the elastic in both of the legs, what I will do is, wow, you want to autofocus there? Good job. Okay. So I will take that whole seam here that's open and fold it back together. And we're going to line up the edge of the fabric with the edge of the fabric on the other side. And I kind of line up the lace a little bit to kind of, I don't know, just to make the pattern of the lace look nice. And this I do pin a little bit just to kind of help keep it lined up when I'm starting the seam. And I will, right here where the casing is for the elastic, I'll make sure those are nice and lined up too. And sometimes the stitching line is a little bit off, but it's not usually too far off. And then I will come up here to the top, and where we ironed in, I'm going to make sure that these ironed lines line up. That is super important to me because that's going to make threading your top elastic a little bit easier if those lines are lined up. So I'll take a pin and push it down and make sure that it's coming out in the same spot of the fold where I ironed on both sides, so that they'll stay nice and lined up. And then you can see where these are folded. I'll just open these up to make sure that I stitch straight through all of them like I would a regular seam. I just ironed the lines in first because it's easier to iron flat than in a circle. And then I'll just go, I start at the lace and I just sew, because I'm using that cotton lace, I'll just sew straight through the cotton lace and straight on down. And straight on down, and I'm using my 1/2 inch seam allowance. And then because this is just a straight line, you could pin this more. I'm not going to. I'll just make sure that they line up while I'm sewing them because I have the important parts pinned. And then I'm just going to go and make sure they're all lined up. There we go. And that is one side seam closed. You see that? And then I will go and do the other side. I mean, you probably can't see it, but I have a magnetic pin bowl. You can get them from Lowe's in the like screw section because, you know, construction people or like handymen use them for like random screws and nuts and bolts and stuff, but I find them very handy for pins, and then they attach onto the outside of my sewing machine. Did I lose a pin? Oh, there it is. In my skirt. I'm gonna pin just this there, and then sew the seam up. And sometimes if it looks like one side is going to be a little bit looser than the other, I just kind of pull and stretch it until they line up a little bit better. Yeah, the magnetic pin bowl is just like really handy. And I know they sell them at fabric stores, but the one from the hardware store is bigger and cheaper, so why not?
Yes,
and there is also just yes. On our site, our size 3, our large size, goes up to like a 45-inch hip, so like a decent size. But yes, I can make them larger than that.
Or if you need it shaped a little differently or something like that.
Yep. Or again, I don't sell the long ones on the site as a general rule, but if you call it or if you email and message us as a custom, I can do the long length ones. So what I like to do here is when you've got the lace that kind of is sticking out, I like to open up this seam and just kind of top stitch this lace down to itself, just so it's not flapping around and then it won't ravel or come undone. Because sometimes lace can be a lot more loosely woven than cotton fabric. So I'll just come and take and top stitch this down just to make sure that it has, you know, a little bit of security when you're washing it in. And so then what it looks like on this side, you probably can barely even see. Because there's a little bitty stitch line there. Why is this so hard to see? A little easier to see on this side. It just kind of holds the seam open a little bit and kind of gives that lace something to anchor against. So I'll do that. And that's just for washing's sake. It's really, that's the only reason. I don't want it to come apart in the washer. But you wouldn't necessarily have to do that, especially if you put a different kind of lace on. Or if you put it on.
I'm looking at the pair of bloomers you made me, and it's like, oh, you did that with mine. I didn't even notice.
Yeah, and that's the thing. It's like not really a super noticeable thing. It's just there, and I just do it for security's sake. So there's that. And then now we've got our side seam sewn up. Let me switch myself here real quick. And now I've got something that is vaguely bloomers shaped. Haha! The side seams are done. I'll adjust the elastic fullness after I'm all done. But if you can see where we've got it folded, you can open up your side seams that you've just sewn this way, or you can leave them folded flat in one direction. It's really up to you, however you like to do it. But what I will do is open them up, and since you have stitched or you've ironed in those little spots already, you just fold them down where the iron already was, and then fold them on top of themselves, like this. And then I do pin just at the seam lines on this. So I will go around and make sure they're all folded down and pin on those seam lines just to kind of give me like 4 anchored spots that I know exactly where I want them to line up. Ah, yes, showing off.
Well, it's also a different color, so you can see, might be able to see.
Oh, yeah, how it's stitched open a little bit. So I'll fold that seam down, make sure that the seam is all lined up, and pin it. And then pin that
By the way, here are the bloomers I have.
Oh, yes. Those lovely Technicolor dinosaurs.
Eventually there will be a matching dress.
Yep.
So here we are. They're all pinned together, just at the 4 seam lines. Now, I'll show them this way. When I cut these out, do you remember that the back was slightly wider than the front? It's not going to be super apparent. They're going to be just a little bit over the edge. You see there? Where my pins are is easier to see. I've got my fingers stuck in them to make them, the same amount of fabric on both sides. And there's a pin on both sides that are slightly to the front, which means the back side that's closer to me is bigger. And that's going to be my back. And that's where I want to leave a little opening to thread that waist elastic in. So I'm going to make sure that I get the back. And then what I do is take this to the machine and kind of give myself maybe like an inch and a half past that middle seam where that pin is. And I'm going to just start sewing along. And this is where you're going to want to try to keep this part as flat as possible. Oh, sorry. Keep this part where you've ironed and folded as flat as possible, just to make sure that you're still maintaining that 1 inch of casing for your elastic, and then sew as close to the edge of this fold line as possible. There we go. And like I was saying while you were ironing, if you wanted to iron it a little bit wider, like 1 1/4 instead of 1 1/8, then you could do that to give yourself a little bit more wiggle room as you're going around this seam.
Someone suggested old flannel sheets would make great winter bloomers.
Yes, and I have made some flannel bloomers before, and they are very warm and cozy. But yes, the flannel sheets, if you have them left over, then you don't have to go out and buy more for something that no one's ever going to see. I used to try and make cool, funky, goofy bloomers, but no one bought them because no one was ever going to see them. So I just started making white and black ones, and then the occasional flannel when I get something cute.
So if anyone's interested, we still have a couple Grumpy Cat.
Oh yeah, there's still a couple of Grumpy Cat bloomers floating.
Those might make a good thing to give to charity auctions at cons that we go to.
Yeah. So it was really funny. I mean, we got the fabric and I made them in preparation for Anime Boston 2020, right before the old pandemic. And so they never got taken on the road to a show. They've just been sitting on our web shop. And I took them to the Safe Space Market, which is or LGBT and POC artists and vendors, and that is where I sold one pair because Richmond's full of quirky people, let me tell you. All right.
You should have given it to Neko's charity auction because it was for like a cat rescue.
Oh, I didn't even think about it. Darn. But now I have reached almost the end of my, you can see that pin is where I started right here. And there's my pin for the center back seam. And then, so I'm just going to stop sewing here and leave myself this little opening that is about 2.5 to 3 inches wide, right in there. And that's where I'm going to thread my waist elastic. So I have grabbed my waist elastic, and actually the loop turner unfortunately does not work well on something that is in a circle, as is the top of the bloomers. So I do have to go in and resort to the safety pin, which I use a pretty big one that I've used this same one over and over again, so I know it's not going to pop. But if you have one that's popping open on you, go find a different one. But I'm just going to tuck that up in this little hole here, and we're going to start threading it in. And I just smush and munch with the safety pin. And again, here you could use the bodkin. I don't know how big the hole in the bodkin is for something like a 1-inch elastic. But when I get to a spot with a seam, I just kind of wiggle it around in here until the safety pin goes through the seam, and then I'll just continue pulling. And then to be slightly careful when you start pulling your elastic, you don't want the end of your elastic to disappear in your casing. Although you probably could use the loop turner to rescue it just for a short distance. It's just the circle aspect that the loop turner doesn't care for. I guess I've seen like those curved ones that are like clampy things that are called loop turners, and that it might work for this. I'm not really sure. But I'll just kind of ease the fullness of the fabric along the elastic until I can wiggle it and wiggle it out the other end. And if you feel like this edge is going to disappear into the casing, you can always pin it down right here to the seam line so that it doesn't go anywhere. Usually though, this waist isn't too bad. So I'm going to, there it goes. It starts to pop out the other end. I'm going to give myself like a pretty decent tail to work with. So I have 2 spots, and I'm going to then overlap my elastic by about an inch, and then just sew it down on each raw edge of elastic. And I'm going to go forward and backward and forward and cut it off, and then we'll do the other edge. And that just makes sure that it's really well tacked down and it's not going to pop apart inside the seam. So now we've got this elastic that's been overlapped with itself. And as I stretch it, it's going to keep stretching because I've only sewed it in those 2 little spots. So then what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull.
Question. How do you keep the top elastic from twisting? Use different type of elastic, but always have issues.
That we will get to. I will definitely explain that. That's one of my little tricks that I have come across along the way that I really, it's key. It's key. So now this is still not very even. You see how it's like pretty flat and straight over here and like pretty tight and packed over here. I want to do that just so that I can sew this little hole closed. And because this is something that I'm going to sell, I'm going to take and put one of my little tags in the back that says what size it is, mostly just for me, so that when I'm fishing things out or tagging things, I know what size they are, and I don't have to measure them or compare them to the other ones in the pile. So this one I made is my medium size. It's a size, I just put a little 2 on it, and I put those same tags. We've started putting them into the dresses because I got them recently. So I'll just tuck this, and that way you'll always know what the back is if you put a little tag or something in there. And sometimes too, you can get like made by so-and-so tags made for yourself, or just like a cute little picture.
Speaking of, don't we need to order more of those?
Yes, garment tags, we do. So I am just going to make sure that when you sew along this little seam to keep it closed, it's a little bit more challenging just because of the elastic on the inside kind of makes the foot move around. So you have to be really delicate and gentle when we go across here, making sure it's all sewed down. So there we go. I've got my little thing sewed closed and my little size 2 tag in there. And now I have got, here we go. Here I am. And I've got it real tightly packed on one side and kind of loose on the other. So I'm going to start going around and easing the fullness and making sure that it's even all the way around. And at this point, it is a little bit twisted in some spots. So I'm going to do my very best to line up. Let me pop myself over here again. I'm going to just kind of ease this around just to make sure that the elastic is sitting correctly inside the casing that we've created. And you can see how it's kind of puckering right here because the elastic's not sitting quite straight in it. I'll just kind of smush it around with my fingers until it kind of sits the way that I want it to. And this, there we go, that's about right. So we're gonna make sure that all the fullness is even across here. And then what I'm going to do to combat that twisting elastic problem, because I've definitely had that in some of my store-bought pajama pants. I am going to come over here to each little seam line, and I'm going to sew just right along the seam itself. So you're not going to be able to see it. We've made sure that the elastic is pretty even across here. I'm just going to come over here, and I'm going to sew straight through the waistband and the elastic. And I'll do a little back stitch, and then chop it off. And then you are going to see almost none of that on top of that seam. And if you do that on each of the 4 seams of your waistband, there is almost nowhere for it to roll, or it can only roll but so much. And then it is pretty much just stuck in between. If it rolls, it's only in that one little quarter of your waistband and not the whole thing. So it doesn't turn into like a big twisty loop. So that is my little secret for keeping your waistband from being a jerk. And I have done this to my store-bought pajama pants. When they start to twist, then they drive me crazy every time I wash them. And this is just a quick little thing that I go along each seam. And it doesn't affect the look of them at all. And I'll come over here and that's not what I wanted to do. Bloop. And we'll stretch it out. And then I will take the legs and kind of the fullness along these legs right here. And do the other one. Make sure they're all nice and stretched and gathered, because you don't want a lot of fullness of gathering elastic on the inside of the leg, which is where they were concentrated because we wanted to leave the outside seam a little bit more open. So we've got our legs and now it's inside out. So we will flip it. And then, oh voila, here we are. A nice little finished pair of bloomers. And we've got our lace. They've been top stitched down, so they're going to stay facing down. Basically, every time you wash them, there won't be an issue with that, with them flipping or curling. There's a little tag in the back, so we know where the butt is, so it hopefully shouldn't give you too much of a sagging crotch. And there you go. That is just an incredibly basic but quick pair of bloomers that someone who doesn't have a whole lot of sewing experience can probably accomplish even in one day. So there we go. Here we are. Any other follow-up questions anyone have? I know I've been kind of answering questions along the way, but that is our finished pair of bloomers. I guess we'll give the chat a moment to catch up, I think. I forgot to put it on the super quick chat function. But yeah, there's little tools that you can use to make your bloomers quicker. But there's definitely many different ways you can do it that are just as easy as others. And like I said, if you find yourself a crazy old Halloween costume pattern that has some bloomers in it, that especially with these, they've got your size. And even if you can't find your size of it, they're very easy to make larger or smaller. And that's what I just took that basic one and made larger size and smaller size and kind of adjusted it to fit a wider range of people for our clientele. But yeah. Or again,
show off what Michelle's done.
Oh yeah, how many has Michelle made?
Well, I really only completed one.
Oh.
I'm just in the middle of sewing a bunch.
Right.
It's kind of started, and I don't know.
Yeah, so we've got a comment. I never thought to serge all the edges while it was flat. Yeah, that was one of those things that I recently started doing. Just everything is easier when it's flat and open, and I basically wait until the last possible moment excuse me, to sew up those side seams. So those are the seams that run along the outside of your leg, as it were. This would be the size that I would wear. Angle it down just a tad. So yeah, this outside seam here, that's the last thing that goes up because everything else can stay open and flat. Iron it when it's basically open and flat, and then it's just everything's easier. I don't know. Don't have to finagle with stuff. You don't have to. If you have, most people have a regular ironing board that has that kind of like angled tip to it. You can slide closed up bloomers over the edge of that little angled tip, and you could iron it in maybe a little bit more easily than like say my big flat table. But if you can just do it flat, there's really no reason not to. Yeah.
So this was our belated February stream. So we will be doing a March stream later on this month.
Mm-hmm. It might possibly be a sewing challenge for me. Because as you can see here, Michelle and her nails, she's figured out how to work with nails, but I have regular length nails of a person who barely does them. And so I do not know how to work with even semi-long nails. So that is more than likely going to be a sewing challenge for me while Michelle and Sam laugh at me for not being able to function with really long nails on.
Yeah, I think we should have another like rematch. What do you think?
No, yes, we could rematch.
I don't know, maybe like a skirt, 10 wrist cuffs. I don't know. Like,
Yeah.
what do you guys think that we should have sewing battle face off?
Oh, definitely. Yeah, wrist cuffs would probably be something we could do.
Wrist cuffs would be pretty funny.
Yeah, because they're so small and like fiddly, and like I do actually pin my ribbons and stuff on the lace, so that would be a huge pain in the ass.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's more than likely what our end of March live stream is going to be, just because why not?
Rachel has to wear nails, but you have to use my sewing machine.
But your sewing machine isn't any. Your sewing machine's nicer than mine.
But it's in metric and it confuses you.
No, it doesn't.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I don't know why her oh, thank you. Yeah, I wanted a very spring set. I'm tired of winter. No more winter. But Megan's sewing machine she got from her grandmother, and it was like $1,000, $1,000 or something. I have a brother, a like whatever brother. Okay, it's not some Project Runway brother. It's just a regular old whatever $150 brother. Like, and you want me to use your $1,000 sewing machine? Okay.
Okay, but it's vintage. It's not like my grandmother didn't pay $1,000.
It is not vintage. It's kind of a computer system.
Okay, if we want her to do vintage, we can have her use my machine.
Oh yeah, we can have Michelle use Sam's 1950s singer.
Oh, or we could both use our Genomes.
Yes, your Genomes.
Maybe that's what we should do. Yeah, I should use my 80s Genome. Although I have no clue. I mean, I'm sure it works because it's like all metal on the inside.
Just drop some oil down and it'll be fine.
Yeah, I think I'll just have to go in and clean all the things out, and then should be good to go. I guess so the main like thing with using my Genome is that it's so slow.
Yeah. That'll be your handicap, is a slow machine, and my handicap will be nails.
Yeah, at Katsucon I got to size Rachel for press-ons, and I used my longest press-ons, which are actually as long as my nails are right now. So, it'll be an even playing field.
It's going to be horrible. I'm going to die. I'm going to end up stabbing myself.
Honestly, because you're just going to glue them on, they're probably just going to, fly off, and you'll be like, haha!
You're right. I do have the man hands.
I mean, I don't know, unless I put them on you, because that would be funny. Then you wouldn't be able to get them off. But also you wouldn't be able to get them off.
So, look forward to that for the end of the month. stay tuned.
Yeah, tell us in the comments what you would like to see us make with long nails.
with long nails and a slow machine.
Not saying Genomies are slow, it's just Michelle happens to have one that is much
Michelle,
older.
Ancient.
Yours was like less than $100, wasn't it?
Oh, it was $80.
Oh yeah, okay. It's like, for like reference, it's like this big. It's
It's
really tiny.
it's small, but it's heavy. Like it's definitely made out of metal.
Mm-hmm.
How do you size for press-ons? I wanted to order the planetary symbol set.
So any of the press-ons that we have on the website will fit anyone, because all of the sorry about that. Wow, earthquake. Okay. Because all of our press-on sets are made with having 22 to 24 nails, so you're getting every single size in a set, plus a couple extras of the middle sizes. And for that specific set, for the planetary symbols, each symbol is drawn twice on 2 different sizes.
I think for that one we sold the one we had, so you would need to make it. So if you're interested in that one, just message us, and if you want it a little bit different than what we showed online, Michelle would have to custom make it anyway. So,
and also, since it would be a custom, just let us know approximately how long you want them, and like shape as well.
Yep. So that is good to know. Yeah, the nails are good because then you can fit your nails to any size that are in the box, and you'll have some accent nails and some more plain ones that you can kind of interchange around.
Oh, Mia.
You'll fit whoever. Because actually, some of my nails, like my middle fingers, are 2 different sizes, so I can't just say that, get 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 or whatever, and then on both hands. They're going to be just very dependent on each individual finger.
She doesn't
put enough floating around in there for you. Alrighty, well, I guess that about does it for us. I know this was an extra long stream this time, just trying to finish up those pair of bloomers. I think if I wasn't talking, I could have squeaked it down a little lower than an hour and a half, but hey, an hour and a half isn't bad. So definitely a doable project for anybody who's looking for a nice little butt cover for their Lolita. If you've ever been in an extremely windy situation that you don't want your skirts to blow up, they have saved my butt a few times.
So yeah, stay tuned to our social media to hear about our next stream and next events and things. And we will see you later this month.
See you next time. Bye. Thanks for tuning in. All right. Ending. Yes.